Okay, hello, greetings, citizens. Justiguy has arrived, and I apologize if we talking over the sounds of the cicadas is I don't know. I don't have any fancy background music, and this is like one of the only things I know of offhand that is both appropriate and won't get me copyright attacked or anything. So just real quick, as you can see here, tonight we will be diving into Tsumihoroboshi as is going to be, since we finished Miyakashi last time. But there have been events in the currently airing Higurashi series that I wanted to talk about. Not that I don't, talk about it a lot on Twitter anyway. That I figured, what the hell, I'll just vomit out some words on stream first before we get started. So, like the words say here, if you just want to stick around for the read through whatnot, is there a word for that for VNs? I don't think it's Let's Play. Anyway, then skedaddle, I guess. And that's pretty much the best way to put it. So let me just move that a little bit over so it is not just covering up the screen. We'll just slap it on my chest or something. Yeah, that should look better. Marginally. My internet's looking icky. Okay, so, long story short of it, we're approaching the end of Higurashi Sotsu, which has devolved, as some would put it, into a DBZ fight, if you will, between Rika and Satoko. And if you're not familiar with Umineko, and I mean, hell, even if you're not, like, Sakonia freaking opened with, not opened, I guess, but like the first chapter is basically a big one of these with Meow and Jaden, if I remember right, and I hope I should. It's barely been 2 months since we streamed that, but anyway, that is not my issue. Like, as far as, I guess we'll start with that though. I don't think there's a problem with the DBZ fight. Like, as far as that whole side of it is concerned, if we're looking at Higurashi is, I know a lot of folks make, a big thing about, oh, well, this, connects this to that, whether it's Higurashi to Umineko or blah, blah, blah. But I mean, from the start, Umineko is when they cry 3. Umineko, it's not Kai or whatever, but it was when they cry 4. Sakonia is when they cry 5. Like, they've always been when they cry. So, like, however little or large the connection has been, it's always been there, in my humble opinion, and I am just a guy after all, so, whatever. That might not mean much, but so to me, like, that is not the huge biggest thing. So, but I guess my point, backtracking a little, is the DBZ fights, if I guess we'll call them that. Sakonia has that, but not on the same, that's, I guess, quote unquote, grounded. Umineko, meanwhile, has that with all its witch stuff, and I think we are well past the point where we can say that Rika and Satoko are presently at the level of witches, I guess. I mean, Satoko has been called that multiple times. We can kind of assume that's what Rika is. I don't know if we could say for sure Rika is Burn and Satoko is Lambda right now. I don't know if that's where we're going or what. That's theorizing that I'm not touching. But point is, this is not real. This is, I don't know. This isn't When They Cry 6. It is like a side thing to When They Cry 2. So point is, it borrowing stuff When They Cry 3 and 4. I don't think that's a huge thing. In context, it, makes sense. Whether or not you like it or have to like it, that is an entirely different matter, and I totally respect that. But, I guess that's not really the main thing I'm here to talk about, or, I mean, that makes it sound a lot more, I don't know, pompous than I meant it to be. So let's, whatever. DBZ fight is DBZ fight. It is what it is, and honestly, I actually really liked how it, I don't know, was used as a way for them to just kind of accept that, they're both immortal, they're looping, fuck it. We don't need to go over the specifics with each other, They could have, sat down, or they being not the characters, the, I don't know, staff, the show could have sat down with, okay, we're going to explain how the implications of this, what this means, that these characters are beyond death, that the way, characters in a shonen series would, on the sidelines, explain everything that we can see happening right now. It may well be that, hell, that'll happen next week anyway. But, just to clarify, what is happening here is that these two, now that both are aware that both are looping, they can just kind of move on from all of the loops, all of the death, all of the killing, because they are above it, essentially. And that's not, or at least as far as I can tell, really the issue for either of them. Like, they're like, fuck it. That's not to say, they don't care about the people within those loops, but they've just immediately seemingly acknowledged that, that's not worth arguing about. This is between her and me, and whatever else is not the point, which is why I would like to say I think they immediately jumped into arguing about what I feel has been the core of the entire issue from the not even the end of Gou, which was the whole mess with brain catch up with my thoughts, the St. Lucia's and all that nonsense, and Satoko getting betrayed and Rika betraying her and yada yada yada. And obviously I think for a lot of people, Satoko putting Rika through all that suffering is just unforgivable. Like, how could she? But I mean, this is, again, the franchise that literally did that years ago with Beatrice and Battler. Like, I've said this on Twitter multiple times, but the way I see it and have seen it for, literally months at this point is, in this, when you boil it down, Satoko is just Beatrice to Rika's Battler, and except Satoko is also just playing a much more active part in her game. And otherwise, they're both characters that are being using really violent methods to tell someone a message, but that's someone they love. Spoilers, I guess, sorry. A message, but that's kind of it, and that's fine, I think. Like, if anything, that's compelling. That's like the real because beneath all of the magic and the mystery, that's what When They Cry has been about, and that's what makes it so compelling. Not like, ooh, the killer lollies, the yanders, it's the I don't know, it sounds corny, but yeah, the friendships, the relationships, the love, all that stuff. That's what is, I think, the driving force, and it's just what makes the killer noise so not necessarily scary, but, at times heartbreaking and, I guess, compelling too. And, I've talked about that on other streams, but let's see if I can change the picture. Okay, that worked. Nice. So, backing up again, again, there was everything that happened at the end of Gou that we saw from Satoko's perspective, and I just gotta be blunt about it. I think right now, from where they are at this level above life and death, which I would say is not. Oh no, did my internet die? Come on. Okay, we're good. I would say, before I get into this, because I mean, this might invalidate everything I'm about to say, but it does almost seem like, because they have accepted that they are, loopers and all that, and they're above life and death and all that, that this doesn't matter anymore, and it's more just they're getting out their feelings, their frustrations and everything. But I don't know, for me, especially just having, kind of sort of watched reactions, I really feel like, one, the fact that they're both loopers is not being taken into account as much as it should be for a lot of folks, because again, once you hit that point, they're above a lot of other stuff the way we think about it. And I think the characters themselves express that pretty well in the how once they started arguing, it was not, they just did not give two fucks about anything but the issue between the two of them. It's like, it's almost like you could say everything in Go and Sotsu that you could say Satoko put Rika through, all of that you could argue is just Satoko keyed Rika's car, and now they're arguing about why. Like, that's almost what you could say it's like, now that they're both acknowledging that they're these higher beings and blah, 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 blah. That's not the point, because, well, no, that might be the point. That might exactly be the point. I'm sorry. But that said, I feel like, Rika just, my concern throughout most of Sotsu's run is that they're not going to really address that a lot of this really is just kind of Rika's fault. Like, and I mean, you can tell by the title of the stream. I don't know if I'm putting this up on YouTube later, but I'm actually very proud of this. It's Rika lied, people died, cicadas cried. And I'm trying to find a different picture to put up. Here we go. I won't resize it. That'll fuck things up. So, if we accept everything I've just said as a premise, if you will, that after Satoko started going cuckoo for Rika Puffs, that was all her, akin to her, like, keying Rika's car or whatever, as far as the main fight is concerned. And the thing they're fighting about is what is prior, and that seems to be the case, then I think it is fair to look at Rika's actions, And I gotta say, the show is, as far as I could tell, not doing that. And to be fair, it doesn't seem like it's doing that for Satoko either, but in not doing it for Satoko, it makes it easier for the viewer to just essentially not take Satoko's side when she's just screaming, I hate studying, da 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 da, as she was, when that's not really what this is about, as Satoko herself said way back in Go. It's not what it was ever about. I mean, you've got the freaking opening of the show, the whole I believe what you said, blah, 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 blah. It was about Rika from Satoko's perspective, and I think objectively, I would say, not, I mean, I've called her, I've said it in multiple streams. She was a shitty friend. I mean, end of story. Like, Rika was a shitty friend. She's a shitty friend. Period. There. Like, you could argue that, just to recap a little bit, not that I don't think anyone's even here, but to recap just a bit, the whole thing about I hate studying, like, that's not the point. It stopped being the point as soon as Satoko started going on about this past the very first loop, I think. Like, I feel like that really only means anything in the context of, but she did it anyway. But despite her best efforts, it wasn't good enough. She still, fell apart from stress. She still couldn't keep up. She still ended up isolated and miserable and just being at that school, which, by the way, as Shion went to great lengths to describe in Miyakashi, it sounds like a real fucking shithole. Like, what the hell is up with Rika idealizing this place? Like, I get that there's like apparently a distinction between the rich girl side and wherever the ones who actually actively want to go here is or whatever, but even so, what? I'm honestly surprised Shion even let Satoko do this, or that there wasn't some kind of anything. I'm at least glad they never showed Shion in a scene of all the preparations, because, yeah, that does not make sense. But regardless, point is, studying thing is kind of bullshit, but Rika, in regards to the studying, as Rika herself brings up, and as many fans have brought up, oh, why didn't Satoko study? Why didn't Satoko accept the studying invitations, quote unquote, from Rika and her friends? And I mean, like, I'm kind of like, back the fuck up here, because first of all, for Rika, that is a very passive approach. That's her just like, I went back, and I don't know if the manga has approached it any differently, but all of Rika's quote unquote attempts at approaching Satoko are really passive. And I do think that is, and I'm kind of hoping maybe the end of Sotsu is going to address this. That's kind of her deal, that she just waits around hoping for a miracle. And for the longest time, I was thinking maybe that's the point this was leading up to, that, she, took Satoko for granted. And, the big lesson here will be, oh shit, that was the thing. Because she really did. Like Rika said herself in the scene I've actually got up on screen, she doesn't want to go to St. Lucia alone. And she, yes, does want to go together with Satoko. And it's not to say that she does not adore Satoko. They do to each other, adore each other, that is. That's not up for debate, but when Rika finally got there, she kind of just fucked off on her own. Like, her everything, and even during their argument, everything she tells Satoko is just acting as if she herself has no part of it, and as if she herself did not promise that she would be the one to help. It's like, hey, you didn't, so, whatever, not my problem. It's like, again, like I was just saying, it's hopefully is going to touch on the whole idea of, a miracle, that it's not you actively doing something, it's you and which is a recurring theme in at least a lot of When They Cry, Umineko, blah, 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 and Higurashi, obviously. But that it may not go there, and it's just gonna like let Rika, quote unquote, get away with it, kind of worries me, because again, you could argue this, and I'm gonna, I guess, argue this entire show only essentially happened because Rika fucked up. And I mean, that's the only way I can put it, Like, sure, Satoko made mistakes, but all of them happened, I don't think because of Rika is fair, but the chain of events were in response, or not maybe not always directly, to things Rika did or didn't do and didn't do things that, she said she would do. Like, when she's yelling at Satoko, she's like, oh, I didn't ask you to do this, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, what she's saying is, I'm sorry, I'm not being specific enough. She's like, I didn't ask you to essentially be considerate of me living my dream, and you stepping back and letting me do that because you knew you didn't fit in and hated it. Like, when it's like, I feel like the argument only works, if it works at all, because they haven't actually shown the stuff from St. Lucia in months. Because Rika just sounds like a fucking brat. And like I mean, what I said yesterday was she's gaslighting Satoko. Like, that's what it sounds like to me. And like, again, Satoko, again, if we're going back to my analogy, it's not like it's okay that she keyed the car, if that's what we're going to equate everything to. Even if Rika was in the wrong in whatever she did that set it off, that's not like that justifies it. Like, the core of the problem is these two kids who very clearly, deeply care about each other have not found a proper, healthy way to talk to each other about this. Because, at the end of the day, Rika wanted this thing, dreamed about this thing, and is totally justified in wanting it and pursuing that, but she dragged Satoko along with her and just kind of, again, fucking dropped her like a rock. She didn't keep up her end of the bargain, and it was a bargain. I mean, which is kind of my really, really major issue with this whole thing even with the studying. Like, Satoko didn't want to go there. She is only there exclusively for Rika, because being there would make Rika happy. Like, her being there is not even being there, her going there is for Rika's sake. Like, I'm sorry, but that kind of feels like just that by default is her having done exponentially more for Rika at St. Lucia than we ever see the other way around. And I don't think a lot of people really take that into account. Like, Rika wanted to be there. It was her quote-unquote dream to be there. Satoko did not want to go. She does not fit in there. She does not make friends. She is miserable. She can't keep up. She is only there to be with her, friend, girlfriend, whatever you want to call them. That's not the point right now. And she, uprooted her whole life to follow Rika, and Rika just said, fuck it. Not literally, obviously, but I mean, that's kind of the core of it. And if Rika's only response to that, which it kind of seems to be, is, well, I invited you when surrounded by a bunch of my cronies and you didn't accept it, is, if that's all she's got, fuck that. It's Rika's the one who brought Satoko here. It's kind of Rika's job to make sure that, I guess personally, I don't get how you can ever, in any possible way, I don't know, defend feels too much of an aggressive way to put it, but how the fuck can you possibly, I guess, take Rika's side on this? Because it's like, especially in the second loop, where Satoko explains everything that is going to happen, and it happens, and Rika still doesn't do jack shit about it. Like, at this point, Satoko has literally not done anything yet, except go through two loops and be let down by someone she treasures dearly, severely, And that's not to take responsibility off Satoko, no, but again, this is something I think a lot of people really dismiss. Her going there at all, even if she did nothing beyond that point, is a huge, huge thing that is never really reciprocated by Rika at all. And I don't feel like the show intends on really doing anything. I gotta move that. Doing anything with that fact. But hold on a moment. This isn't gonna look good, but it's like, and here in this scene in particular, it's the end of the second loop, right before the big shocker twist where Satoko snaps her fingers and the chandelier comes down. And this is like a perfect example of how Rika's attitude is kind of to blame, quote unquote, for this entire freaking show, because this Satoko has approached Rika with no real hostility except towards Rika's cronies, and I'm going to call them cronies because they've shown no positive traits except for... No, they show no positive traits, ever. Like, I don't know, the fact that Rika actively, as far as we can tell, constantly is with them and has seemingly never chosen to really seek Satoko out one-on-one, as far as we're shown. And it, you know, an offhanded sign during their argument or mention, which still mentions, or rather included the friends being there. I mean, that, like, fuck that, you know? But anyway, point is, right here in this scene, Rika was perfectly capable of honestly fixing this and possibly preventing the show. Still, right here at this scene, I believe that. If Rika, I mean, hell, Satoko said in this scene that when Rika responded, that wasn't the response she was hoping for. Which I'd like to think implies that there was still a chance, you know? Satoko called Rika out on her bullshit, and I think it's fair to say that this was heavy, heavy, heavy bullshit of Rika's. And what happens? Rika is like, hey, fuck you. You know, this, you didn't try hard enough. You know, even though at this point, this is now the second loop where everything would have happened exactly as Satoko said. Exactly as she described to Rika. And so, which means Rika did actively tell Satoko, that won't happen. I will not let it happen. And so, instead of living, you know, making good on that, she has turned around and, you know, said, you didn't do your part, which is not true. If we look at their whatever as a purely a bargain, if you will, Satoko's part of the bargain was, as she explicitly said, to go with Rika, and that was it. She even outlined in this agreement she wouldn't be able to keep up. She wouldn't be able to endure mentally. She would be alone. She would be miserable, and so on and so forth. And Rika said, no, you won't, because I will fix it. And what happens? Rika let it happen. Like, again, that's not to justify everything after this. It's, and in the analogy, that wouldn't justify Satoko's keying of Rika's car or whatever. Again, that doesn't make any of that okay, but to focus on it, and this is to both fans and to the show itself, is to really just kind of ignore the actual problem. And I know that might sound ridiculous, considering what followed it in the actual show was a bunch of murder and horrific torture and escalation that under normal circumstances you couldn't ignore. But in these circumstances, like I said earlier, there's actually precedent for this exact situation working out into a happy and healthy, loving relationship, if anything. So, which is why I explicitly mentioned that. So, I mean, that's kind of, you know, it really, like, Rika fucked up. Like, like I said on title screen, Rika fucked up, end of story, you know? Satoko wasn't the one who made a promise. She was not the one who... anything. Like, the entire premise of... as far as I'm concerned, as soon as it came out, as soon as the subject of St. Lucia came up, unless they're arguing and Rika still doesn't actually remember, which doesn't seem to be the case, then as far as I see it, Rika is just being a little brat about it. And again, that's fine. Because they're human. Like, you know, they're not perfect characters, they're flawed. That Satoko didn't somehow find a way to fix this. That she fucked up in the first place. That they didn't magically figure this out themselves. The entire show, the entire first series even, is built around flawed and human people. That's what makes it compelling. The fact that this all started because, I think, of Rika's fuck up, but descended into Satoko going around killing people or causing people to kill each other is, I would say, compelling. And if the resolution is able to acknowledge that and address it, then that would make for, a compelling story. But I am, my concern is that it won't, more or less. Well, not more or less, I guess, that's what my concern is. The fact that this show has reused so much footage also, but up until now has not even really mentioned St. Lucia. Never mind shown footage of that, kind of also concerns me, because it's like, hey, again, this is the thing this show is ostensibly about. You're not talking about it. That's kind of fucking weird, isn't it? So, there's that. But I digress. What's going to happen? There's one episode left unless they decide to announce another show. Where could they possibly go from here? I think for starters, if anything, if they go by what a lot of people seem to want and destroy Satoko, or anyway, it's going to be shit. Like, unredeemable garbage shit that has no place in this franchise. Like I said, this for the most part, this is it resembles a lot of what I would say was the core conflict of at least the question arcs of Umineko, and the because of it is what you learn through the answers. I know that's not called the answers, but the analogy isn't one-to-one in terms of the timeline, since we saw, Satoko's thing first, so that's not the point. And really, like, Takano would have been, destroyed or whatever as this horrible evil. We would never have seen her in scenes like this one, ever, if that was what this franchise was about. Like, that would never, ever have happened, I don't think. I mean, hell, they would never have shown Teppei the way they did this in Sotsu, if that was the kind of show this was. Like, could you imagine if Sotsu really does end, leaving the viewers more sympathetic towards fucking Hojo Teppei than Satoko? And I am worried that that's exactly what's going to happen. And honestly, even if it's not the intention, I feel like that is still what is going to happen, just because of pure accident. Which is fucked up for an entirely other reason. And, I don't want to... Anyway, I've gotten severely off topic, and maybe it would have been better to come back to this, or rather do this last night when I was so mad. I'm not really, but just annoyed, I guess, at this idea of like, how the fuck, maybe it's just from distance from Gou, or not unfamiliarity with Umineko and When They Cry in general. We are just beyond what Satoko has done being the issue here, I think. Like, it's, as far as resolving this issue, it is more that Satoko felt she had to do something in response to the supposed, what's the word? Slight against her from Rika. Like, at that point, that's kind of where we are in the grand scheme of things. And if the show is able to address that and acknowledge Rika's part in it, then, hey, we maybe can still have a good resolution. I do think if it does that, it can absolutely do that in one single episode. But will it? I don't know. I mean, it is very easy to be able to lay out everything Satoko's done in one episode. It's been kind of laid out this whole show. Some would argue multiple times over, even. But, you know, they also spent a lot of weird time focusing on, honestly, stuff that I don't think mattered, and glitches and blah, blah, blah. It's like, at the end of the day, like I've been repeating now, the core of this comes down to their conflict, and that's what they gotta resolve. And if they don't do that, then, you know, I feel like that is gonna make or break the show's resolution. And, you know, for some people, it'll be like, no, fuck that, I just want to see Satoko get her come up, and say, well, I think you've, you know, missed the point of the show. But is that necessarily the show's fault, or I mean, is that necessarily a person's fault or the show's fault for just doing a shitty job of giving the message it was trying to? And or was it even trying to give that message at all? I don't know. I'm just a guy after all. But I mean, you also have like what the fuck was going on with all this? You know, this nonsense. Hold on, why is it not showing up right? Yeah, well, whatever. Like, this happened, and it's just kind of, what was the point? You know? Was it supposed to be symbolic of, like, you know, meta world shenanigans? In which case, we have to go back to that quote from, her name's not Feather in the real world, but, you know, it's something that I think Ryukishi writes, or Ryukishi keeps in mind with when he writes. It's, and just in a way, it's kind of good that, you know, in that he doesn't give a fuck. Or maybe that's not the right way to put it, but it's like how, you know, I think this is true for a lot, or creators in general, that a bunch of people aren't going to get your message. A lot of the people that do get the message won't really think about it, and it's like it keeps cutting down until it's only like 5% of the people that see your works will only really get it and appreciate it. And, you know, so, you know, maybe with this, so maybe with everything I've been talking about, I've just been talking out of my ass. I very well could be. It may well even, you know, I do not know. I really, all I just wanted, when I said I was going to do this yesterday, I just wanted to, you know, yell, not really, about how, you know, fuck Rika, she is the devil, she is Satan, yada yada yada. It is her fault, everything is her fault. She must be held accountable for her sins, blah 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 blah. I mean, and then, you know, go on and on about all the shit Satoko had to deal with. And by the way, she did have to deal with a lot of shit. And also, even before this, there's all the shit she had gone through beforehand, which Rika knew about beforehand. Before there was ever any looping, the girl Rika had to go to this school with is a girl with very obvious, or at least I say occasional in the sense of the loops, occasional, quote unquote, PTSD, a girl who can seemingly see, I don't want to say it's only because of Teppei, because I'm going to go grab my quotes here. I hate that I have to keep referencing these quotes, but where is it? They were, I think, Tatari Goroshi screenshots. But I mean, if we open up, I'm sorry, not if we open up, if I open up that I guess diagnosis of Satoko's, then when she was not even 10 years old, she faked injuries and self-injured herself to give her fake story about her adoptive father beating her believability, which in itself, that she felt like doing that, there's a bunch of stuff to unpack there. There is the whole, where is it? The whole, where is it? Appears to be the child appears to be suffering from an outbreak of something close to neurosis or manic depression. It is possible her unstable mind is negatively, if her mind is stimulated by stress, it will put her development of a healthy body and mind at risk. And it would not be humane to allow this to continue. Like, I'm not saying, again, I don't think it's wrong for Rika to want what she wants and pursue what she wants. But I would say it is perfectly fair to suggest that there is some degree of responsibility that she is not showing when she, does essentially drag Satoko with her and then kind of leaves her, knowing all this well. And I personally, I felt that really extended version of Higurashi, which we found out later, was the whole bit with Satoko pulling the strings and that Teppei arc and Sotsu. The version of what we saw in Gou, to me, was like a really good contrast, if anything, to how Rika handled being with Satoko once they got to St. Lucia. Because you compare that and how Keiichi handled Satoko being in trouble. If you compare everything about that to how Rika later handles it, it's like night and day, honestly. Like, Keiichi didn't give up. So when Satoko was prideful and not doing this and not doing that, he didn't, just sit his ass down and go hang out with his friends. Like, in that arc, Satoko, at a younger age, did everything that could have, that Rika later on seemingly was perfectly fine as taking her reasons to give up, but he didn't do that, And I don't know if it was intentional, but to me, when I see those arcs, especially when in Gou they were back to back, or basically back to back, but when I take those two arcs, I just feel like the point of them was, to show the difference between the passive Rika waiting on her miracles, blah, 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 and someone who actually gives a shit about this person who is not happy and in trouble, or at least from their perspective. Which, again, I feel is kind of the core of this issue, that Rika was not passive. Like, the most active thing she ever did, once, as far as Satoko was concerned, was make a promise, not do anything about it. Like, not actively. And yeah, that's it. She fucked up. And so, now that we're on a, like, Sotsu has been, for a lot of people, a train wreck in a lot of ways. I think, personally, its first two arcs were decent, at least. The third one could have been amazing if they had not fucked it up so badly. But, it is what it is. It was what it was. But at the end of the day, it's all gonna really just depend on whether or not how this resolution lands. I still think Gou is great, but if I don't know, I'm getting to repeat myself at this point, I think. So yeah, I guess I've said what I wanted to say. I don't know if anyone's out there would like to discuss this, or thinks I'm an idiot or totally have things wrong, you are, free to do so. And yeah, I can't believe I actually talked about this for this long. So yeah, I'll take a little break for a little bit, and then we'll start Tsumihoroboshi. So, thank you, those of you who do stick around for the read-alongings. If anyone does, I don't know. And I'll see you in a bit, I suppose. Thank you once again. Farewell, and so on.